Slot together puzzles. So my inspiration for this project was these slot together or nested wooden puzzles that you see quite often at craft stores or even in higher end boutique handmade stores. I thought that we could do this with a CNC machine. I know these are traditionally done with a scroll saw, but I kind of thought that if we came up with a plan and a method for doing this with our CNC, then you can make 3 or 4 of these up, probably in the time it would take you to do maybe 1 or 2 with a scroll saw. So my thoughts were, I want to reproduce something that looks like this, but made on a CNC. I like the smooth shapes. I think those are really quite nice. I want my slotted parts to fit together snug, but not too snug, because I like a child to be able to put this together and take it apart. Then I want to do a little bit of thinking about what could I add that a scroll saw can't do. And then, of course, this time of the year, I thought it'd be good to have a Christmas theme. Now, the things you're going to see in this, you could use this for any theme puzzle or nested puzzle. But for me, I just thought this time of the year, Christmas seemed like a good option. So nativity puzzles. I did a little search on the internet and I came up with some of these great nativity puzzles that are exactly what I was looking for, sort of these nested shapes that slide into these little pockets. And so I used this to come up with my design, which is really quite basic, but you can see that it has the stable, the star, Mary and Joseph, the manger, and then a base to kind of pull it all together. The area with the gray pencil marks in it was going to be one solid piece so that it would be easy to kind of slot things together for little tiny hands. So I was going to use pockets and profiles for this particular project. Now that idea came from our inlay toolpath, and that the method that we use to create a male part and a female right recess and how they fit together perfectly. I was going to use that. And then I was going to test it on this idea of these 2 pieces that were kind of like a very basic nested puzzle or a slot together puzzle. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what the process was that I did to do that. So let's start off by having a look at how to make an inlay so that we can take the E that's on the left, cut it as a positive thing. The E on the right, we're going to cut right through our material. And we're going to put the E on our left, the raised bit, into the pocket on the right. And when we turn our material over, the E will be pointing the right way and everything will be nice and flush on the other side. So to do that, we need to make these 2 parts fit. Now, right now they fit perfectly. They all have 90-degree corners here, nice and sharp, and everything is going to fit perfectly. But unfortunately, the tool that we use to cut with on our CNC machine is round. So let's just, for a starter, we're going to create a circle. That's the diameter of our tool, which is going to be 0.25. Okay, and we're going to create that, and we're going to close that down. So this is the actual tool. So if we're looking at the end of our tool, this is what we'd see. The point, of course, is this. We're going to use an end mill, so that's the size of the actual tool. And you'll see that if we roll it in here, we can't get into that corner. Remember, this is a positive recess where we're profiling the outside of this, or a positive part, and we need to make sure that our tool can get in there, and it can't right now. And then also, if this is a pocket where we're going to cut out all the material on the inside, it will get to these okay, but these outside ones it can't get to. So we're going to have nice sharp points on this guy and round points on this one, and then we're going to have round inside radius corners here, and these will be sharp over here. So definitely the way these vectors are right now, there's no way these are going to fit together. So we have a method that we use that's pretty much a standard way of doing this. We select both of these vectors, okay, and we are going to go ahead and offset these. So we're going to offset these outwards 1 time the radius of our tool. So that's half the diameter. So we're going to select new, and we're going to leave the old one there, offset that. And then we're going to offset that inwards twice the radius of our tool. So 1, 2, and then we're going to go back outwards 1 more time and offset. And now we're back to where we start from. And you can see right there that this is the last of the 2. So now if we delete these vectors out of here, you'll see that we have 2 shapes that will fit together perfectly. Oops. In the end, if we cut them using this tool. So that's kind of the basic way an inlay works. Okay, it's not fancy, it's not complicated, it's just that's just the way it works. So now what we can take a look at is what we would do if we were going to use that process to create this slot together part. So we have these two pieces. We've got this top part and we have this bottom part. And if we look at this right now, then obviously when we cut this part out, we're going to profile both of these. So all of these will have nice sharp outside corners, but when it gets to something on the inside, like these guys here or right here, then we're going to end up having them filleted, or sorry, yeah, inside here, they're going to end up being filleted and so on and round. And we can illustrate that easily by selecting these two vectors, bringing up our toolpath, and we'll create a quick profile cut. Because when you're making a slot together puzzle, it's always just a profile. We're not going to be cutting any pockets, just a profile. So if we go outside that, we're going to go down the full depth of the material. We're using a 1/4 inch end mill. We know that already. And that's fine. So we're going to calculate that. And let's go back to our 2D view for a second. And with our solid preview of our toolpaths on, you can see that we're going to have round corners here. So this definitely will not fit in there. There's not a chance. And this and the corner here won't fit in there either. It's not a chance. So what can we do about that? Well, we can use the same process that we saw a second ago, which would work great. Or we could go ahead and use our fillet tool, which we could use as well. But the problem with that would be it would work really, really well on this very basic part. But if we were going to do something more complicated, there's going to be a lot more fillets, a lot more places your tool might not get to. So how are we going to make sure that your tool always fits everywhere? So the only way to do that is to go through the offset out once, inwards twice, outwards once. Okay, so let's just go ahead and hide our solid preview, turn off our toolpaths, and let's take those two vectors and let's go through that process. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to go outwards. Okay, 0.125. We're going to go inwards twice, and then we're going to go outwards once more, and we're going to keep that end result. Okay, delete that, delete that, delete this, delete that. And there we have the parts that will fit together. So even before we even cut these, you're going to be able to see what's going on here. If we just use our cursor keys, we can move these into position, and those are going to fit together perfectly. Now that's fine and all, but what's also happened is these outside corners are round, and I don't want them round. So how can I make them square? Because I like this to be a nice rectangle with pointy corners. Well, there's a really interesting thing that we can do, which is we can unfillet those corners. So if we go ahead and look at this particular part, this vector, and I go into node mode, then you'll see that these corners, when we did our offsetting, it created an arc here in the corner, which is great. And if there's an arc there, it doesn't matter what the dimension is, we can unfillet that. We can bring it back to a point by using our fillet tool. So if we grab our fillet tool and we hover over top of this corner, you'll see that it turns to an X, and it shows the icon is now a sort of a pointy triangle. If I click there, I can remove that fillet. Now I've got the normal fillet type selected here, and it doesn't matter the radius that I have in there at all. I'm just going to unfillet those. And there we go. Now if we cut those with the profile tool, like we did a minute ago, let's just grab those two and recalculate those. Sorry, select those afterwards and recalculate that. Let's go back to our 2D view and make that preview solid. You'll see that our tool gets everywhere as it needs to get. It's not leaving any extra material behind. Our corners are nice and pointy, and our inside ones are nice and round. So that process, or the combination of those two techniques, should give us the parts that we need to make our puzzle. Now it seems pretty straightforward, right? So there's some things that I needed to remember. First of all, I needed to make sure that I used to circle the diameter of my tool to find any trouble spots with my design. That was kind of important because sometimes you're going to draw something up, and then when it comes to actually finding the actual tool you're going to use, then some of the parts just won't actually cut, or they'll fall apart. I wanted to remember that all of the closed vectors that I was going to use needed to be offsetted out the radius of my tool, and then offset it in 2 times the radius of my tool, or my diameter of my tool, and then I needed to go out 1 more time the radius of my tool, and that would give me all the parts that would fit together right as long as I knew the actual tool that I was going to use to cut this with. And then I need to use the fillet tool to fix some of my outside edges or the pointy internal corners that I wanted to keep, that I knew was safe to keep. So let's just go ahead and have a look at that. Okay, let's open up a new instance of our software and open up an existing file. And we're going to look at the slot together nativity puzzle. Let's open that up. And here we have my vectors that I created off of the design that I made. I scanned it in and I ended up tracing it and editing it a bit and making it exactly the way I want it to be. And then we have a circle here that represents my cutting tool, the cutting surface of my tool, which if I look at the dimensions of that by pressing T on the keyboard, it's 0.24 inches round. So it's just good to know it's not quite a 1/4 inch, it's a little smaller. And then my drawing here, I actually have it all finished. So there's going to be a puzzle part that looks like this. And then there'll be all of these single parts and so on. Now, I needed to use this round representation of my cutting tool to check some of the problems with my actual drawing, or to make sure that I addressed all the potential problems that were there. And I've already done that already, but some of the parts I saw where if this was going to be a raised staff, then it needed to be at least as thick as the diameter of my tool. So I've done that. Okay. And then also the recess in the background of the stable, this pocket or this hole needs to be at least the size. It needs to be wide enough so that my tool can get in there. And so it does. It fits in there. I made it so that it does. Just barely, but it fits in there. And then I went around and checked all the other little parts that needed to be fitted. Like I needed to make sure that the tool on the positive Mary, the tool could fit in here by her hands, and it fits in there no problem at all underneath here and so on. And I wanted the artwork that I have to look pretty good. So this was just mainly for spacing. So let's just go ahead and delete that out of there. I happen to have 2 of them there. Actually, let's just go and press Control Z a little bit, and we're going to move everything back to where it was. Okay, we'll delete those circles. We don't need those now. Now what we're going to do is go through the process of offsetting all of this outwards, and we're going to see if it works like we expect it to. And to do that, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to look at our layers. Now, right now we only have one layer, and it's the original vector layer that I have there. But if I add a new layer, we're going to call this offsets. Okay, and we're going to color that orange. There we are. So what we're going to do is with that layer selected, okay, we can, any of the actions that we do with these vectors, like copying or creating a new thing or pasting a thing, will end up always landing on the selected layer, okay? So if I select this shape here, it'll be my first shape, I'm going to offset. So we're going to offset 0.12 of an inch, okay, outwards. Boop. There it is. And then if we go ahead and delete the original, okay, because I've chosen to select the new one, it's automatically selected my first offset. And now if I delete it, I can go inwards once. So it's deleted the old one, offsetted in my once. There's my twice. And then we're going to go outwards again. And the vector that I'm left with, which is orange now, is the finished vector. And it lives on this offsets level layer. So if I turn off the original vectors, you'll see that's where this one is now. Okay, so that's kind of a neat way of getting things to end up on the same level. Now we're going to do that a lot, so you're going to be able to follow along with that. So let's grab the base, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go outwards. We're not going to delete the original the first time. Outwards that. We're going to delete the original, and we're going to go inwards. 1, 2, and then we're going to go outwards. 1. And there we have a new base that we're going to use. So you can see the rounded ends and everything looks good. We're going to grab Joseph, or this is actually the background of the manger. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go outwards once, inwards twice, and then outwards once. There we have it. That's great. Now we're going to go in and zoom in, and we're going to get a hold of Joseph here. So just by box selecting that area, all I'm going to get is Joseph. Oh, there's some... During my offset there's some little teeny extra vectors there. You can see them there. They're purple. So I can just delete those when I select them. I'll delete those out of there. That's great. Okay. Now, if that happens, it's pretty easy to do. We just want the major vectors. There'll be some other little pieces behind that we don't need to worry about. So let's grab this, and we're going to offset outwards, but don't delete the original. We're going to delete the original. We're going to inwards twice. Then we're going to go outwards, offset, and then we're going to uncheck that just so don't forget. And we're going to do the manger, same thing. I just don't want to make any mistakes, so I'm going to check my work. Then outwards. Check that. Grab this. Now, if you're watching what's going on, you're going to see there's some problems that are cropping up already that we're going to need to address here. So let's just grab Mary, and we're going to go outwards once. We're going to delete the original one, and we're going to go inwards once. Then we're going to go again, and then we're going to outwards, offset, and there's a new one for Mary. And this side of the stable, we're going to go outwards, offset, inwards, delete, offset, offset. Oh, no, sorry. Offset. And the last one is going to be the star. So we're going to go do the same thing. Delete original. No, we're going to outwards once. Delete original, inwards, offset, offset. And then we're going to go outwards once. Offset, close. So now what we can do is we can hide our vector's original and take a look at our offsets. And this is what we end up with. Now, that's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. We have a bit of a problem that I want my star to have pointy external points on it. These points. I don't mind the inside being radius. That's not a problem. But this outside one, I like to have those nice and pointy. Same with this one at the bottom. And then also there's some problems here that are going on. And then there's this really weird gap here that we're going to have to look at. So what we can do is we can address some of these things by, I want to make sure that Joseph at the bottom is nice and straight. So if I go to my fillet tool, I can go ahead and unfillet those bottom bits. So that's fair. That's easy to do. That can be filled out of there. That needs to stay radiused. That can be, because it's going to be flat on the bottom of my wood, my base. I can just delete those out, delete those out of there. Undo. This one I want to have, there's something wrong here, so I'm going to unfillet that, but it looks like I'm going to have to go in and do some editing there by hand, manual editing. That's fine. And that all looks all good. And now my star, I need to unfillet the bottom there, and that one too. Well, that's not going to work because I need to, on my stable, the cutter needs to come around and go down to the bottom of this spike. And it's going to leave a fillet there, whether I want it to or not. So we'll have to see about how I'm going to get around that. I can undo this one here. Oh, that's pretty close. Live with that. That's all right. And then what I can do is zoom out and add my points back in here again, which all looks good. I can actually straighten those out too, if I want to. Looks good, perfect. And this guy here, so that, there's something that's not gonna work there. So, well, that's not gonna work because there's no way that I can get my tool in there and have this round, so, and not be round. Now, why is that? Well, why does it work here and not over here? Well, it just happens to be totally by fluke that this part separates itself right at the point of this star, right at the sharp point. So if I know that, because what'll happen is if I grab this out of here, if I move this vector out of the way, like that, and I move my star out of the way, like this, then my tool can actually go on the outside of this without any problems. And I can go on the outside of this without any problems. So when you put them back together again, then everything fits nicely. It's over here that can't happen. So what I can do is if I could make my point break, or my top of my stable break in the right spot, then I could have the same thing happening here, but over here. And then at the bottom, well, if I think about it, I could actually just drop a break straight down here, and then I could have two parts of the background of my stable, and that will work out perfectly fine. But that probably design-wise, that isn't the best idea. So I think what I could do is if I actually put a triangle in here, then I think that might be a little bit better. And then I also need to go in, and sometimes there just really isn't any convenient way of fixing something like this. I know that I can have straight corners on these particular parts, so then I can just go into node mode and I can insert in some points and just drag this around to where it belongs. And then I can turn this into a Bezier, and I can grab this corner bit and I can drop it out there and line that up. And now it's all fixed up. So on the occasion, you're going to have some things that aren't easily fixed. So let's take that and let's think about that for a second and how we can redesign this a bit better. Okay, puzzling puzzle problems. So on the left-hand side, we have my original artwork that we started out with. And on the right-hand side, we have the edited artwork that I made based on the realization that where I wanted to have points in any of my, or I wanted my material to be cut to a point in my design, I needed to have an actual break in my puzzle right there. So you can see that in the second one, well, maybe you can't see, but if I zoom in a little bit, you'll see that the blue area here I actually fix. So the point of my star will be at a break in my puzzle. So that should allow that point to be straight. And then down here at the bottom, I had to add in another shape. I could have just split that right down the middle, but instead I thought it'd be kind of a nice design element if I put a little triangle in there in the end. So that hopefully will fix the problems that I have. So let's give that a try again. And now back to the software. So here we are back in our software. This is the same set of vectors you saw a minute ago, but I've actually created some new layers for us to work with. So if we go up to our layer manager, we can turn off our offsets original and turn on our vectors updated. So this is the updated vectors that we have. And you'll see that our star is here. We've got it matching up with this break in our material, which means we can keep this sharp point, which is really nice. We can keep this bottom point as well because we've added in this extra little triangle here of material. So if we take these two pieces of the top of our stable and move them out of the way, then we move our star up, you'll see that we can get to these points. Okay, now this is going to be profiled on the outside, so these can be sharp, no problem at all. And seeing as we're going to come down to a break in the part here, the pieces here, then we can have a nice sharp point here, which is great. So let's put those all back where they belong by just pressing undo. And we can go ahead now and start to develop some tooling. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use a feature that we have in Cut2D Pro, VCarve Pro, or Aspire, which is nesting. Now, if you don't have that, if you get the desktop versions of Cut2D Desktop or VCarve Desktop, then you're going to have to do this by hand, which is totally fine. That's actually the way that I did the one that I cut. So it's not a big deal. You can do it. But if you have this feature, you might as well take advantage of it. Along with, I'm going to show you something that may or may not happen to you. So let's delete out that. We don't need that cutter profile anymore. And we are going to go ahead now and create a larger job. Because we can't pull these all apart in this small little job space that we have, we actually have to make a bigger job space. So let's make it 24 by 24 by 3/4 inch thick. That's okay. And there we have a much larger space. Now we can go ahead and marquee select all of these, go to our nesting option, and we can look at our nesting options that we have here. Now you'll see that we have our tool diameter is 1/4 inch, our clearance is going to be 0.5 of an inch, our border gap is going to be 1/4 inch all around the outside. So if you need more information on how this nesting tool works, there's a great video on the support site that you can check out. But this is just kind of the basics. And we can go ahead and really want one copy, so we can click apply, and then we can go preview. And it's going to go ahead and nest that. Now, you're going to notice that it didn't nest it probably like we expected it to. You'll see that the triangle here is attached to the background of the stable. Joseph is in there somewhere. Mary is hooked to the base. So that didn't quite nest right. Now, why did it not nest right? Well, there is a feature or something built into our nesting that it looks for, it's called part detection. And if a part or two parts share exactly the same line, then it does its best to figure out whether it's two parts or one part. In this case, it doesn't know the difference, so it's thinking that this is all one part. So if we undo that, so Control Z, you can see right away that this nice big heavy black line divides all the parts out, but around Joseph it's dotted. Around this triangle it's dotted around it. So there's something that's wrong, that's not going to work there for you. So to fix that, what we can do is we're just going to go ahead and preview that nesting again. We're going to click OK, and then we're just going to grab those parts that didn't quite work right, and we're just going to move them a bit out of the way, just manually kind of slide them aside and make sure they're not touching and they're not sharing any lines. And now I can select all that again, and we can re-nest it. And we'll preview that, and then that's perfect, and we'll go OK, and that's exactly where we're going to leave them. So it's wonderful. We have all the bits that we need, and now we can go ahead and cut these out. So we're going to select all of those. We're going to bring up our toolpaths tab. We're going to check our material like we always do to make sure it's set up exactly the way it is on our machine, and all of this looks fine. Because there isn't any 3D content, that we want it to be at the very top of our material. And make sure all your rapid Z-gap movements are safe and appropriate for your machine, and your home position is the same. So we're going to click OK. And these are all going to be profile cuts. We're going to click Profile Cut. We are going to, our start depth is going to be 0. Now, I don't remember what the Z thickness of my material is. So if I put a Z in there, and I go plus 0.05, then I can go ahead and press equals on my keyboard, and it will do the math, and it will tell me that it is actually going to be 0.8 of an inch thick, which is great. We're going to go ahead and choose that's the proper cutter. If not, I can select a new one. I'm going to go outside all of my lines. That's perfect. I don't need to do it separate last pass. I am going to add in some tabs, and this is going to be important. You're going to need to know your material and how many tabs you need for each. When I cut this, I needed to actually add in a few extras because as I was nervous that things were not going to be right. Put one down there for safety, one there, here, and there. I'm just dropping those in where I think that it's safe and appropriate. And sometimes it's going to be hard to actually sand them off, so you want to make sure that you put them somewhere where it sort of makes sense. I'm going to put one right here. And if I'll sand it from the back, that way if I have any problems, it'll all work out. One on the star there. That all looks good. Let's click OK, and let's calculate that. And it's going to tell us that we're going to cut through our material. That's fine. We're going to click OK. And let's preview our toolpaths. And there we have it. And that looks really great. So they'll cut out perfectly. Everything looks fine. Nothing's going to fall out. I didn't forget anything. That's great. So if you decided that you wanted to use this nesting thing, it looks like maybe we can even put 2 of these in one piece of material. So using that nesting feature, you could do that, and you could cut 2 of these out at exactly the same time and save yourself a lot of trouble. You could be working on something else while you're actually cutting these out, or maybe you could be staining one while you're cutting one of these out. Now here it is cutting on the machine. And all my pieces after I've cut them apart and removed all of the tabs. And then this is it sort of dry fitted together. And you can see that I didn't use the best materials in the world, but as kind of a prototype to see if this is going to work or not, it worked perfectly. There was some chipping, like I said, the end of the star did chip off, the top of the triangle here chipped off, and the little piece down here at the bottom chipped off as well. But that's okay, because I plan on cutting this into a better material the next time around. So I took some time to finish up this basic prototype. I used 2 different kinds of stain, and then in the end, it looks really kind of nice, I think, in the end. Although, again, next time I cut it, I'm going to use a little bit better material. Now, if we wanted to take this a bit farther, what would we do? Well, we could go ahead and actually pocket out some of these parts before we profile them to make them a little bit thinner, to give us a little more depth to our puzzle. So we could have like the background in the stables a little bit farther back than Mary and Joseph and the manger, but also we could profile back or pocket back the base if we wanted to as well. I might not do that in the end if I was actually going to cut it this way. I'd probably leave the base the full depth, but certainly I would consider pocketing out the background inside of the stables. Now, to add a little bit more interest to it, we could take those same parts and we could texture them using the texture toolpath that's built right into the software. And this will give us a nice, neat texture back there I think that would look really quite nice in the end. So I might try that at some time in the future, and I kind of hope that you do as well. Now, that's it for now. I hope you make one of these, and if you do, please share it. If you share it socially, please make sure you tag us in it. If you share it on the forum, then that would be excellent. We'll see it there for sure. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. Okay, thanks a lot, and be safe.